I never thought I'd become the victim of mail theft, especially not by the president of our Homeowners Association. But that's exactly what happened when Karen Wilcox decided I was public enemy number one in our quiet suburban community of Oak Ridge Estates. It all started when I moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago. I'm a recently retired postal worker myself, so I understood the importance of following rules. But Karen took rule enforcement to an entirely different level. She was in her mid-50s with that signature bobbed haircut and perpetually pursed lips that seemed to tighten whenever she spotted the smallest infraction. My first run-in with her happened just 3 days after moving in. I had placed my trash can at the curb the night before collection day, apparently a cardinal sin according to the HOA bylaws, which stated cans could only be put out the morning of collection. Karen marched up my driveway at 9 p.m., flashlight in hand, and rapped on my door so hard I thought someone was trying to break in. "Excuse me, but your trash receptacle is in violation of Section 4, Paragraph 3 of our community guidelines," she said with a condescending smile. "First offense is a verbal warning. Second is a written violation. Third is a fine. I suggest you bring that can back to your garage immediately." I apologized and complied, though I couldn't help but notice how she lingered on my driveway, watching to make sure I followed her orders. That should have been my first warning about what I was dealing with. Over the next few months, I received citations for everything imaginable. Grass that was a quarter-inch too tall, a garden hose visible from the street, a slightly faded section of exterior paint on my back porch that was barely visible unless you were deliberately looking for problems. Which, of course, Karen was. "I'm just doing my job," she would say with that tight smile whenever I tried to reason with her. "Someone has to maintain our property values. You should be thanking me." Things escalated when I decided to install a small bird feeder in my backyard. According to Karen, this was a violation of the "no unauthorized structures" provision. When I pointed out that my neighbor across the street had 3 bird feeders, she informed me that he had submitted the proper paperwork and received approval from the Architectural Committee, which, coincidentally, she also chaired. "You're being singled out," my next-door neighbor Tom warned me one evening as we chatted over the fence. "She does this to everyone new until they either fall in line or move out. Last year, she made the Peterson family miserable until they sold their house at a loss just to escape her tyranny." I decided to attend the next HOA meeting to address the inconsistent enforcement of rules. This, as it turned out, was my fatal mistake. The meeting was held in our community center, a small building adjacent to the neighborhood pool. About 20 residents attended, most looking bored or resigned as Karen ran through the agenda with dictatorial precision. When the floor opened for new business, I raised my hand and calmly described the situations I'd experienced. "It seems the rules are being applied differently depending on who you are," I explained, keeping my tone professional and measured. "I'm simply asking for fair and consistent enforcement across all homeowners." Karen's face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. "Mr. Harrison," she said through clenched teeth, "perhaps you don't understand how things work here. The board has discretionary authority in all enforcement matters. If you have specific complaints, you're welcome to file them in writing, and we'll review them at our convenience." Several neighbors nodded in agreement with my points, which only seemed to infuriate Karen further. After the meeting, she cornered me by the door. "You've made a serious mistake," she hissed, all pretense of professionalism gone. "Nobody challenges me in my community. Nobody." I didn't think much of her threat until the following week, when my Social Security check failed to arrive. As a recent retiree, that check was an important part of my monthly budget. I called the Social Security Administration, who confirmed the check had been mailed on schedule. After a few days with no sign of it, I began to worry. The following Monday, I noticed Karen lingering near our community mailboxes when I went to check my mail. She smiled that tight smile and asked, "Missing something important? That's too bad." Then she walked away, her designer handbag swinging with each step. That's when suspicion began to creep in. I decided to set up a small camera aimed at my mailbox. Nothing obvious, just my old smartphone hidden in a nearby bush, set to record video when it detected motion. It wasn't the most sophisticated setup, but it might catch whatever was happening. 3 days later, my suspicions were confirmed. Reviewing the footage, I saw Karen approaching the mailboxes around 11 a.m., using a key to open the entire bank of boxes, and systematically going through everyone's mail. She removed several envelopes from various boxes, including mine, slipping them into her purse before locking everything back up. I was stunned. This wasn't just petty harassment. This was federal mail theft, a serious crime. As a former postal worker, I knew exactly how serious this was. But I needed more evidence before making accusations against someone as influential as Karen. Over the next 2 weeks, I recorded Karen repeating this behavior 3 more times. On the 4th occasion, she hit pay dirt, my replacement Social Security check, which I had requested after reporting the first one missing. The video clearly showed her examining the envelope, recognizing the government insignia, and slipping it into her bag with a satisfied smile. With solid evidence in hand, I contacted a postal inspector. Malcolm Jenkins arrived at my home the following day, a stern, no-nonsense federal agent who reviewed my footage with growing concern. "This is textbook mail theft," he confirmed. "And the fact that she's using what appears to be a master key for the mailboxes makes this even more serious. How do you think she obtained that?" I explained that as HOA president, Karen likely had access to all community property keys. Inspector Jenkins nodded grimly and asked if I'd be willing to assist in an operation to catch her in the act. Given that my financial well-being was at stake, I readily agreed. The plan was simple but effective. The Postal Service would deliver a decoy piece of mail to me, an envelope marked as a government check but containing only a tracking device. Inspector Jenkins and his team would monitor it and move in when Karen took the bait. 2 days later, the trap was set. I pretended to leave for the day, making a show of backing out of my driveway and driving away, but actually parked around the corner and walked back to meet Inspector Jenkins, who was stationed in an unmarked van near the community center. We didn't have to wait long. At precisely 11:15 a.m., Karen's silver SUV pulled up to the mailboxes. Through binoculars, we watched as she performed her now-familiar routine, opening the entire bank with her master key and rifling through the contents. When she reached my box, her face lit up at the sight of what appeared to be another government check. The moment she slipped it into her purse, Inspector Jenkins gave the signal. 2 Postal Inspection Service vehicles converged on the scene, blocking Karen's SUV from both directions. The look of utter shock on her face was something I'll never forget as agents approached her with badges displayed. "Karen Wilcox? I'm Postal Inspector Jenkins. You're under arrest for mail theft, a federal offense," he announced loudly enough for several neighbors who had come outside to hear. "We have video evidence of you stealing mail from these boxes on multiple occasions, including government checks addressed to other residents." Karen's face cycled through expressions of shock, outrage, and finally fear as the reality of her situation sank in. "This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. I was just checking for community violations in the mail area." "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," Inspector Jenkins continued, reciting her Miranda rights as another agent handcuffed her. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." By now, a small crowd had gathered, including several board members. Karen's eyes darted frantically among them, seeking allies but finding only shocked and disgusted faces. Her purse was searched on the spot, revealing not only my decoy but several other pieces of mail addressed to various residents, including credit card statements, utility bills, and even a birthday card with a gift card still inside. Federal mail theft carries penalties of up to 5 years in prison and fines of up to $250,000, Inspector Jenkins informed her as she was led to the waiting vehicle. "And that's per offense. We've documented at least 7 separate incidents." Karen's perfectly maintained facade finally crumbled completely. "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, struggling against the handcuffs. "Do you know who I am in this community? I run this neighborhood." "Not anymore you don't," said Walter Green, the HOA vice president, who had witnessed the entire scene. "Consider yourself removed from the board, effective immediately." As Karen was placed in the back of the postal inspection vehicle, her mascara running down her cheeks, she locked eyes with me one last time. "This is your fault," she hissed with pure venom. "You'll regret this." But watching that vehicle drive away with Karen inside, the only thing I felt was relief. At the preliminary hearing the following week, Karen sat stone-faced as the judge denied bail, citing the seriousness of federal mail theft charges and the evidence of ongoing, deliberate targeting of community members. When the prosecutor announced she was facing multiple felony counts carrying a minimum of 3 years in federal prison and fines totaling over $100,000, Karen's composed exterior finally shattered completely. She collapsed into sobbing hysterics, wailing about how someone of her community standing couldn't possibly survive in prison, while her former HOA board members watched from the gallery with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed satisfaction.